Right, I said I'd do a little sequel to the first video I did on growing up in the hood of Detroit and, going back and forth, living between two divorced parents, two different lifestyles, one in the country, one in the inner city. A lot of kids went through that, though, I'm lucky, though, and I'm really lucky because in hindsight now I realize had I stayed there, let's just say the kids I grew up, they saw and faced a lot more. Some of them died. So all my siblings, thank God, are alive, but they saw more crap than I did. So, like I said in the first video, my mother moved. We lived in 3 different places on the east side of Detroit, and you can listen to the first video if you want to on that. A lot of times I bounced back and forth, like almost every other grade, between my dad and stepmother and my mother. It was confusing as hell. I remember being extremely shy. I don't know if I was shocked or what. I managed to get through and pull the grades and everything, but it wasn't easy. And but I'm over that now. For a long time, I felt sorry for that little girl, me growing up, but I don't like pity. I don't like that crap anyway. So, I'm thankful in a lot of ways. I got to taste 2 different lifestyles, and one of them was, I'm going to show you a picture of my dad's house, not in this video, but another one. I know the layout by heart, but at one time in my childhood, I thought I was a princess. I really did. Anyway, I love my parents. I really love my dad a lot. I always was proud of him. And man, he was a looker back in the day. He's just a very old man now in his early 90s, but he's still going strong. He just remodeled 3 years ago, 4 years, before he turned 90, I think he was 88, he remodeled the whole garage, single-handedly cut all the wood and everything. He was a carpenter by trade and a builder. But after my stepmother died, it was kind of bizarre. 50 years later, he was married, I believe, to my stepmother for 50 years, living out in Arizona, and after she died, my dad doesn't like to be alone, but he called my mom, and I guess they were talking on the phone. He came back, and they remarried after. It's bizarre, no big wedding or nothing, just a priest in front of a priest. Things that happened to Detroit. First of all, I'm not going to go through the schools again, but when I was about 12, 13 years old, I had a group of girls I hung out with a lot, our little crew, our little gang group, whatever you call it, and Kathy, Cheryl, later on Alicia, but mainly it was just me, Kathy, and Cheryl. And we used to do or dare pranks on each other. First of all, hitchhiking was legal back then, not for little kids, but we got away with it. We never had any problem. One time a close call, I'll get into that later, but I had rules. For some reason, they made me the boss, I guess, to make the decisions. I don't know why. I was a Fruit Loop just like they were. But one time, I think we were... Let's see, it was summer after, I think I was 13, I don't know, 12, 13 years old. I don't know. I went to 7th grade, went back to Detroit for 8th grade. That summer after 8th grade, we would lie. We lied to our parents. We'd pretend we were sleeping, and then we'd sneak out of the house at, around 1 o'clock in the morning because we just wanted to hang. Like a lot of kids did this. It was cool. It was like the whole city was dead. There was nobody left in the whole area. It's like, what? This is like the end of the world. Everybody died or something. Seriously, there was no traffic out, nothing. Maybe a stray car comes through, once in a while on Van Dyke Avenue. But basically, we just wanted to sneak out and roam around. And that's what we did. We roamed the streets. And then eventually we get tired. We go to this little place called Robin Hood Park. And we felt safe there. That was mostly a bunch of older hippies in their 20s and maybe older. We would just sit there on the swinging, watching them nodding out, shooting up, sticking needles in their arm, the whole bit, And one night, we got busted. The cops came. They surrounded the park. And I remember the paddy wagons coming, the sirens blaring. And all of a sudden, all these cops, Detroit cops, start running through the park, and everyone's dispersing. Everyone, the hippies, we. Oh my God, my. Let's see, it was me, Cheryl, and no, not Alicia, not yet. It was Kathy, Cheryl, and me. And Cheryl was barefoot. She had taken her sandals off, and she didn't have time to put them back on. The reason why I'm mentioning that about Cheryl taking her sandals off is, as we were running, we got into the alley we were running. But back in the day in Detroit, all the alleys were gravel. They weren't like smooth cement or anything. So that's why I mentioned she took her sandals off and, she's running like crazy like us. But all along the way, she's screaming and cussing because she's getting hurt. She's getting cut up on the feet. You know, it's hard running on gravel. So we're barreling ass. Excuse my French here. We were barreling. I was scared. We were scared. We were just 13 years old, you know, and we could hear these cops. And I remember they got so close to us, and they're like, one was behind my back a little ways, and I heard, "Halt! Halt, little girl, halt, now." And I remember turning my head to the right over my shoulder, and he blasted a flashlight in my face. That just made me run faster. And back then, you know, we're scrawny little skinny kids. We could run. We could probably win a world marathon record. We could really run fast back then. So we headed for the alley. And all three of us are running. Kathy's way ahead of us. She was the big tomboy of us, and she was hopping over yards, fenced in yards, cutting through people's. I don't know what happened to her. We had to wait for a while because me and Cheryl kept on running. Cheryl's cursing and crying because she's cutting up her feet, you know, her sandals are off. Finally, the cops backed off, and it got quiet. And so then we didn't know where to go because we knew not to go home at that time in the morning. It had to be at least 3 a.m. now. And we knew not to go because somebody could hear us and we're going to get busted, right? From our parents or whatever. And so we waited till daybreak, and we sat behind these, you know, you have these alleys in Detroit, and then they're lined with garages. And so we just sat behind the garages. It was kind of freaking me out because a big rat ran by. They were the size of cats back then. Oh my God. And I didn't scream, though. I knew if I screamed, somebody might wake up and turn on their lights and catch us, you know, loitering on their property behind their garage. So I don't know. Daybreak came. Then Kathy found us. I says, "Where the hell were you?" You know, she kind of just went really far and then came back and found us. So now it's about daybreak. We waited a little while longer. Then it's 7 o'clock in the morning. So back then, McDonald's used to open up early, and it wasn't too far. So we went into McDonald's to use the toilet or whatever, and we got in there. Incidentally, as a side note, I believe, don't quote me on this, if I remember correctly, it was the first McDonald's on Van Dyke and 7 Mile Road in Detroit that opened. I believe it was the first one they said that ever opened. And then, you know, McDonald's, the rest is history. They flourished all over the country. I think even other countries. Yeah, they became really big. I just wanted to throw that in there because I just thought of that. It was kind of interesting. And we got in there, and there's all these cops, all these Detroit cops. I mean, there must have been 20 of them, and I guess getting their coffee and stuff. But we went in there and just used the bathroom. We come out, and the cops are still there, and they're laughing at us. And we thought, this is weird, you know. And one of them said to me directly, he says, "We know you were there." And I'm like, "Where?" And I was playing dumb, you know. He says, "We know you kids were in the park." And then they scolded us, "Don't ever do that again. It's dangerous." And it's dangerous to be, you know, roaming around the streets of Detroit all hours of the morning. Actually, I didn't say anything to him, but it was actually safer because nobody was out. I guess there could be a stray criminal running around, but basically we'd walk down main streets, right on the street, like Van Dyke Avenue and stuff. Usually it's so much traffic, you get hit by a car. One little kid did. I don't know. But not in my group. There was another incident where a little girl crossed and got hit by a semi-truck, and they had to scrape her off the sidewalk. Yeah, that was awful. But, you know, we just roamed around. Sometimes on the weekends, we'd go to the bowling alley off of Van Dyke where we lived, and we'd stand outside just panhandling people, like spare changing them, we called it. We'd sit there and, "Spare change, got any spare change?" And every time there was an adult that we opened our hands and they'd give us coins, you know. It was pretty cool. But yeah, we did that. Living in Detroit, we had moved 3 times. We lived in 3 different places on the east side of Detroit. First, Ferry Street near downtown Detroit. Then Quinn Street off of Van Dyke near 7 Mile Road. And then finally, later on, Kilbourne Street off of Gratiot Avenue, more east side of Detroit, like a little bit closer to downtown Detroit. I mentioned all that in my first video. When we were at Quinn Street living, it was summertime again, I remember, and I was walking down the basement stairs. My brother's bedroom was down there. I used to clean it for him sometimes, and he'd give me like 50 cents a week or whatever. But I was walking down the basement, and before I got to the bottom of the stairs, I saw 2 legs coming through the basement window. And I started screaming bloody murder. My grandmother was home. She lived in the downstairs duplex home. And she's yelling at me, what's wrong? I'm running up the stairs. There's somebody coming in our basement, you know. So she right away called the cops and that. I guess my screaming or something must have scared the perp away. But when the cops got there and they scouted the whole backyard and stuff, they found a big blade next to the basement window. So yeah, there was somebody trying to get in our basement with a knife, and who knows what they would have done. So that was a close call. Sometime later, I remember my mother was at work. My brothers, I don't know where they were at. They were probably hanging out with their friends. And I don't know where my grandmother went. She wasn't home at the time. My sister stayed with her, but they were both gone. So I was the only one home at the time. I was upstairs at the time, and I remember it was really hot outside. And upstairs we had, off the living room, was like a little tiny balcony with a railing. It was kind of cool, but it was small, and I opened the door to get some fresh air in because it was really, really stifling hot upstairs, and we didn't have air conditioning. So I wanted to take a nap, and that's what I did. But before I did, we had a balcony off of our living room. It was like facing our backyard, and you could like open the door and walk out and sit on this little balcony if you wanted. But anyway, I just opened it to get fresh air. We didn't have air conditioning back then, so I was hot and I was tired. And so I just laid on the couch and, wanted to take a nap, and that's what I did. And then I started hearing screaming. I woke to hearing screaming, and it was loud. It was like, at first I thought, oh, it's just a bunch of kids out there playing, riding their bikes or, screwing around, because kids play loud. So I didn't think anything of it, and I just dozed back off again. And then I woke up, and it was more screaming, and it was really loud. And I thought, what the heck? Anyway, long story short, they reported on the news that night. By the way, we finally had black and white TV, our first TV. So anyway, yeah, we were watching the news. My mother was home. Everyone was home now. And they reported that an elderly woman in her 80s was murdered. And where she was murdered, like right behind our house on Quinn Street, behind our backyard of our house, there's an alley. And across from the alley was a big field. Like, I don't know if there was a house that stood there one time or whatever. When we moved into our house on Quinn Street, I remember it just being a big empty lot, a grassy lot, So I don't know. But anyway, they reported that a woman in her 80s had gotten murdered. Yes. While I was taking a nap and hearing all that screaming, that's what I was hearing without realizing it. And what they found, I don't know how they caught this kid. He was like a 13-year-old kid or something, and he stabbed her to death while stealing her purse. Anyway, they found the lady's purse. I guess he had dropped it. I don't know the whole details. But, they had to get her body, send it to the morgue and everything. And then the cops, get all the belongings that they could find on the ground. And what they found was that this woman had only $1. That's all she had in her purse was $1. Yeah. So I don't know how they caught him. They didn't go into that detail. But he was a 13-year-old kid. He murdered an elderly woman for, $1. Of course, I'm sure he thought if he could get her purse, she had probably a lot more money in it. Regardless, it doesn't matter. And I remember all of us felt shook up about that. It was pretty scary. I mean, we did lock our doors and everything always, but we still were scared a little bit, But I'll never forget that. And I still, after so many years, I kind of blame myself. I mean, it's not my fault, but I don't know, why didn't I just walk out on the balcony or look out the window or something? I don't know, I was real tired, and I remember, kids, they always made, in the summertime, they're riding their bikes, playing with their friends outside, and they're usually yelling and laughing loud and sometimes screaming in excitement or whatever. I don't know. I just wondered what would have been different if I would have actually seen it. It probably wouldn't have done any good, though. In hindsight, I'm thinking even if I would have witnessed it, if I would have, stepped out on our balcony and looked, or even looked out the window, what could I do? By the time I even ran down the stairs, and I know I wouldn't have had the courage to run up to them, I don't know. For some reason, that still sticks with me to this day. I don't think about it often, But I'm going down memory lane now with my life in Detroit, and yeah, I just realized, and as I'm telling you this, I kind of feel sick in my stomach about it. But anyway, that was pretty scary. Uh, we ended up finally leaving that whole neighborhood, and then we moved to Kilbourne Street, which wasn't much better. Incidentally, I Googled Earthed all the places I lived in, and the house on Quinn Street's gone. When my husband and I, before he died, we took a tour, because I won't go into Detroit by myself anymore, and I asked him to take me around to my old neighborhoods. And sure enough, the house on Quinn Street, apparently, according to the neighbors, burned down. The one on Ferry Street also burned down. That was our first home. And they were both duplex homes. And then our third house is still standing. I Google Earthed it, and it was kind of a nice home. As a matter of fact, all the homes around it were really nice. There was a physician that lived on the corner, I remember, in a big, like 2-story brick home. But everything's ramshackled now. It was really run down. Yeah, it's still there, but it's just, yeah. Then when we lived on Kilbourne Street, we moved later off of Gratiot, a little closer to downtown, but kind of more on the far east side of Detroit. And I remember my sister, my mother, and I lived there at the time. And I was working downtown as a cocktail waitress in the Westin Hotel. And my sister, I forget where she worked, my mom had a job. And we were all gone. We did have a big dog, a Great Dane. Anyway, we come home one day from work, all of us, and we were robbed. And the house inside looked like a tornado hit it. I mean, everything was strewn everywhere. There were dresser drawers from our bedrooms thrown all over the living room, clothes everywhere. Every room trashed, completely trashed, furniture broken, lamps broken. I mean, everything was trashed. And that really pissed us off, I think we were more angry than scared. But they got a hold of some stuff. They found some rare coins my mother had hidden and some money. And it actually, I don't know how to describe it. It's definitely a violated feeling. And interesting enough that our big dog, we were wondering how come he didn't scare him away or anything. We didn't train him to be an attack dog, but just barking and stuff and his size could have scared them. But then that's when we saw the steak bones and meat bones all over the kitchen floor. They just fed him, so he wasn't afraid of the perps. The perps fed him meat. So at the time we were thinking it had to be one of the neighbors because they knew we had a dog. So it had to be somebody that we knew, not personally, but one of our neighbors that robbed us, I don't know. And finally, when the cops got there and stuff, they inspected and all that and did the incident report. And one of the cops said, you ladies need to get out of this area. You need to leave because it's nothing but crack houses everywhere now, especially even on this street. And we kind of knew that, but we minded our own business. So we eventually did get out, got the hell out of Dodge, so to speak, moving more into the suburbs of Detroit, north of Detroit. But yeah, that was wild. Then one night I was working downtown in the Westin Hotel, and 8-10 hour shifts on your feet. It was very high class dining areas. We took turns working the 2 restaurants that were really fancy. One was a Summit on the top, one Galleria below on ground level, and across from that was DJ's Lounge. Most of the time I worked the discotheque DJ's Lounge on Friday and Saturday. Sometimes during the week I would work the restaurants. I hated discotheque music. I say that all the time. That's all they played. Joey Ryan, by the way, was our disc jockey. He was very well known, the radio host on Magic Radio in Detroit. I looked him up a while back. He died. That's unfortunate. He was a lot of fun. After work, all his waitresses and him would go down to Greektown, and that was in the days when Greektown stayed open to the wee hours of the morning, and we'd go and get Greek food, watch a little belly dancing. It was all classy stuff, nothing smutty. Yeah, but I don't think they do that anymore. I don't know. But anyway, one night I'm coming home. It's about 2 o'clock in the morning, and I'm driving down, down Gratiot Avenue. I was headed south to our home, and my green Plymouth Fury, the ugly, beat up, rusted out vehicle, it just broke down. It just stopped, and I couldn't start it again. So luckily, fortunately, the angels of God were with me because it was near right next to a little tiny one of those little dinky rinky gas stations. I went up to the window. I tried to get in. He wouldn't let me in at that hour in the morning, but I gave him my phone number to call my mother to pick me up. So I knew I was going to have to get a record service in the morning or whatever. So I waited outside, and here comes these two thugs. These two, I'm going to say they're middle-aged men, African-American men. Not that it matters, but I'm just giving you a description. And they never said one word to me. One of them just pulled up in the car. The other one gets out. Then the other one started stripping my tires off of my vehicle. And I remember, when I get scared, I get mouthy, even if I'm scared. So and at that point, I started yelling at him. I was like, man, I need my tires. Stop touching them. I just kept on running my mouth. I just wouldn't stop running my mouth. And one of the guy gets up, and he's got the crowbar in his hand. He gets up, and he's swinging it. And he's swinging it next to my head. And he says, I'll just say it. I'm not going to be kind here. He says, bitch, if you don't shut your frickin' mouth, and he didn't say frickin', he said the other word, I'm going to bust you in the head with this. And I did quiet down after that. What else could I do, right? Now my mother pulls up. She's pulling up because the gas station called her. And she stayed in her car, and she's mouthing. I could see from the street lamp into her car. She's like, I couldn't hear her, but she's like, get in the car, I guess she was saying. But I'm talking to the cop now. The cop shows up too, right? So anyway, and I just start saying, first I was nice. I was, please stop taking my tires. I need my vehicle to get to work every night, I did, man. I had to make a living, and they didn't say one word, nothing. And I didn't think of it until later. I'll get into that, what I thought about something that happened that night too that is very bizarre. So anyway, I guess the gas station attendant also called the cops because he was watching through the window of his gas station. And here comes this one cop. And I didn't think anything of it at the time. But anyway, he stopped and he asked me what's going on. I said, they're stealing my tires. I broke down, they're stealing my tires. So he looked at the two thugs and he says, look, you're going to put those tires back on her vehicle or you're going to pay her for them. And they're like, well, we ain't got no money to pay. And the cop says, then you put those tires back on. They had like one more tire to go to take off. And then I stopped the cop. I said, wait a minute, that's not going to do me any good because I'm going to leave without a vehicle and get a record service in the morning to tow it, to the garage. I'll guarantee you if they put those tires back on, they're probably, all the tires will be gone in the morning. I was right. The next day, that's what happened. But the strange thing is this. In hindsight, many years later, just recently, I was thinking about this incident. I didn't think about it back then. There's one cop that came out. Now, my husband was a Detroit cop for like 30 years in Detroit. He was one of the good guys. I'm not just saying that because I loved him. He was my husband. No, he had a reputation for being a good guy. He wasn't a prick to the public, okay? He was a good guy. He was a good cop. But back in the day, most of the cops would buddy up at nighttime. There'd be two cops in a squad car because all kinds of, what hits the fan at night and gangs and all that. So they need more guys. They didn't usually drive solo. And my husband told me that later. Sometimes they did. So this is a solo cop that came out and he's telling them, to put the tires back on or pay me. And now years later, I thought of it. I said, wait a minute. Was this cop in part of the deal? Because he's watching a crime happen right in front of him. Why didn't he just arrest the guys right there for robbery? And where was his backup guy, backup cop? What I mean by that is him being part of the deal. What I mean by that is maybe he was in on the deal so that when these two guys sold the tires after they stole them from me, then they were going to maybe give the cop later on a cut of that. See what I'm saying? I don't know. But it burns me now because why didn't I think of it back then? I guess my adrenaline was running high and, I couldn't think straight. I was scared. But first of all, he should have arrested him. He witnessed a crime, a robbery, right in front of his face, this cop. So number one, he didn't arrest him. Maybe the cop was in on the deal to get a cut of the pay. Maybe that's the reason that the perps were stealing tires. They sell them on the street. They make some money, right? I don't know. But maybe the cop was a crooked one. Maybe he was a buddy of theirs. Maybe he was going to get a cut of the pay once they, sell the tires. And there was no solo cop that came with him, which is unusual at that time back in the day. Like I said, my husband said at nighttime, because that's when more crimes happen, the gangs are out, blah, blah, blah. And they usually buddied up. Yeah, they always buddied up at night. In the daytime, not so much, but I don't know. I could be wrong, but I don't know. It just really ticked me off, though. Yeah, it cost me a pretty penny to get a set of tires. Plus pay the record service to tow the vehicle to the garage, etc., etc. Oh well. That's water under the bridge now, right? I can't do anything about it. Regardless, I thought about it. I says, that might have been a crooked cop. Yeah, it might have been. That's what I'm thinking. And sure enough, the next day, the tires were still gone. I didn't get paid for them. And that was that. And it cost me, I think, back then, $400 or $500 to get, I don't know, like my whole paycheck for the week. It pissed me off. Just things like that would happen. Incidentally, when we were living on Kilbourne Street in Detroit, I never heard of him. I heard people talk about him in the neighborhood, White Boy Rick. I didn't know who he was. I was too busy living my life. And it wasn't until many years ago, just recently, a couple years ago, I watched that movie documentary on him. He was like at a very young age as a kid, he was an informant for the FBI or something. But then as he got older, was dealing with drugs. He was a big drug dealer. So in the movie, I realized that they said he lived on the east side of Detroit, near certain areas. And I looked it up on Google Earth. I said, oh my gosh, he was only like 2 or 3 blocks behind us. Not that that's a big thing. But no, he didn't. I think he's still in prison. Yeah, he's doing time for all that. I don't know, maybe not. And then there was the time I was working downtown Detroit with my buddy waitresses, and I'm not going to mention the first name. No, I'm not going to mention the first or last name because I think he's still alive. Let's just say it was, I don't even want to say how he was related because then you'll figure it out. It was one of the members of a family of one of the big 3. We have GMs, Ford, Chrysler, all that. He was a big to-do, okay? Not the president, okay, just one of the family members. And he would come in to DJ's Lounge a lot, and he'd stand by the end of the bar, and he was an alcoholic, really severe. He was a nice guy, but I didn't ever really talk to him or anything. I just know he was always stinking drunk. So one night he stayed real late. We're closing up the place. We're closing the joint up. Everyone's gone. And he asks us waitresses, there was like 4 of us, and including me. And he said, hey, you guys want to go out to an after-hours party? And, we're dead tired. We're on our feet 10 hours, whatever, slaving away for the, I didn't want to. I didn't feel like it. I know Edie didn't want to. There was Edie, Carol, me, and what was the other girl's name? I don't know. We didn't want to. Carol, on the other hand, I'm sorry, she did want to. She says, look, I want to go. Because she says, I've never been to an after-hour bar. And I don't go to bars. I don't drink alcohol to this day. I never did. I hate the taste of it. I'm a popaholic. I was a cocktail waitress, but I didn't drink the stuff. That was my job. Anyway, so I finally caved in. I said, okay, but who's driving us? Well, it's going to be him. And I'm thinking, he's stone drunk. Well, we got in, and he was swerving here and there, but there's hardly any traffic out on thank God, in the city streets at that hour. So he got us there, and we ended up in this really rundown area of Detroit. And I didn't want to get out. I'm looking at the building. I said, my God, where are we? I mean, this is ghetto, right? I mean, I grew up in the ghetto. I know this is ghetto. So I said, okay, fine. Let's just do this and get it over with. So we get it that we go up these long stairs, like 2, I don't know. There's a bunch of stairs we had to go up, winding stairs. And we go in, and sure enough, there's a bar, in this darkened room. It was almost pitch black, with just a little bit of lighting. And there's all these people hanging out at the bar. And I walked over there, and then right away I backed off because I saw what they were doing. They had lines of Coke all over the bar counter. And I thought, shit. And I didn't want to be there. I thought, oh my gosh. So I said, look, and I asked the guy, I said, can you just take me back to my car at the Westin Hotel? I'm going to leave. No, he was not going to do it. He stayed there a while. So me and another waitress, the other one, she's having a party with them. The other two of us, we went way in the back, sitting in the dark, so no one could see us, just waiting. And I was imagining in my head, oh God, can you imagine this? After hour bars, I found out later, are against the law. They're illegal. Oh my God. 4 waitresses busted with so-and-so, big name, right? Big name of a guy, corporate name. Busted in an after hours joint doing cocaine. I'm like, oh my God. I swear to God, I do not do drugs. I didn't want it. I saw too many people in my neighborhood and friends that died from that stuff. I just wasn't into it. Only later in life did I have a brownie with marijuana in it. One time I hit a joint a few times with friends. I mean, we're talking much older in life. I didn't care for it. I kind of like the magic gummy bears. I do. I'm going to admit that. You can buy those legally, but. So anyway, I'm worried because now, hour goes by, 2 hours. I'm thinking, oh my God, how are we going to get back? And how is this guy going to drive us? He's stoned out of his mind. Somehow, God's always protected. And somehow we got back. He did drive us back to the Westin Hotel so we could all get into our vehicles and go home. But thankfully, there was no traffic out because he was really, really driving erratically. I mean, I thought we were going to get killed. He was crazy, crazy high. He was really drunk and high. So I never squealed on him. Nobody did. You don't do that. You don't do that in the hood. You do not squeal on anyone. You don't tell anyone. I'm just telling you many years later, decades later. So that was an eye-opener. I hated that. That scared me, But I kind of laughed at later because I'm thinking, can you see it? 4 broads with this Mr. So-and-so, big name all over the world, busted in an after-hours drug joint bar, oh my God. Oh my God. Thankfully, nothing happened. I always prayed. I remember always praying. Even back then, I'd say to myself, oh, Jesus, help me or something. I don't know. God's always come through. Never again. That was crazy. And and then there was another time. The kids back then, we used to do and dare each other. I think the boys did, the girls did, we all did. You do or dare your friends at like 12 and 13 to do something. Just hanky-panky stuff, little shenanigans. So one day I tell Cheryl and Kathy, my friends, my best friends, and we're like 13, right? So we hitchhiked to 7 in Van Dyke area. 7 in Gratiot area. I'm sorry. We lived on 7 in Van Dyke. We hitchhiked to 7 in Gratiot area where they had all these little boutique stores for men and women clothing and that. So I said to them, I dare you. I dare us, actually, all of us, to go in the store and steal something. I'm not proud of it. I'm laughing, but I'm not proud of it. We're just kids. So they're like, yeah, let's do that. So I don't know the name of the store. It was a woman's clothing store. We go in there, and it was summertime. Nobody was really in the store. I didn't see anybody, really. It was a small boutique. In the day at that time, they had what we called sizzlers. They were like little mini dresses. I don't know how to explain them. Anyone can remember them. You know what I'm talking about. They were real pretty. I don't know, different patterns and stuff. They were just like one-piece mini dresses. They were really, really pretty. They were real nice. They might have zippered down in the front or button down in the front. So this one rack had these little sizzler dresses, and they fold up real small. So I said, we're going to take something. So we took turns. We'd go up to the rack, and we conspicuously, so we thought, stuck one in our pants. Then all of a sudden, we hear a voice screaming at us. Now, this is before security cameras, so I used to be a security guard picking up shoplifters. That was another time in Adrian, and back then we didn't have security cameras. You had to lay above the ceiling in the attic kind of and look through a window and either run down a flight of stairs or a ladder. One place I went was with a ladder. You had to go down, and I almost killed myself doing that. So anyway, he caught us, and he's yelling, and I didn't see him, but I could hear his voice. And he's like, stop, little girl, stop. And we're just barreling. And me and Cheryl got out right away. And Kathy, we thought, was behind us, but she wasn't. We were so scared. Me and Cheryl just kept on running for it had to be a good mile before we, slowed down and walked. And so we go back home, and we don't know what happened to Kathy. We don't know what happened to our buddy. She got busted. She got caught. And apparently she was there all day because she came back in the evening and called us up at home and we all met her. And she says she was really mad at us. We said, what happened? She says, they caught me. And they interrogated her for hours. They wanted to know my name and my friend's name. Yes, they wanted to know my name and Cheryl's name. And Kathy was such a good friend. We're talking 13 years old. What a buddy. I mean, she was threatened to go to juvenile detention center, she said, by the cops if she did not give our names. And she never gave our names. Can you believe that? She never gave our names. Now that's a buddy. You would think she would have broke and said, yeah, it's so-and-so and so-and-so, No, she never did. But she was madder than hell at us. Oh, man, she was angry with us. So angry, she wanted to kick our butts in a way, but she didn't. She was so angry. But they let her go. They gave her a break. Thank God. But I swear to God, after that, I never stole again. And I remember my mother used to tell us kids when we were younger, if any of you kids steal anything from a store, God's going to punish you because you'll get out of that store and a big semi-Mack truck is going to hit you and kill you. I know it's tough talk, but it worked, and it used to stay with me. But that one time we did. We stole. And I felt guilty about it. But I did enjoy those Sizzlers. I did like that outfit a lot. I did wear it. First, I confessed to God in prayer, and then I confessed to a priest all my sins. That same summer, I remember coming home, and we were still living on Quinn Street back then. And my older brother, I caught him. He went into his bedroom, and he had the door open, and he lifted up his shirt, and he pulled out another shirt. So I never confronted him, but I figured he stole something. Oh, gosh. He was just he was a year older than me. 14. I don't know, but it was wrong. And I know years later, I repented all of that in confession to a priest. All my sins. Yes, I did. Fast forward, then it's summertime. And Kathy and Cheryl and we decided to hitchhike up to a place that you ride horses. My friend Kathy, her parents had bought her a horse, and it was kept up there in this horse farm. I forget the name of it, though. It's above Utica, north of Detroit. My friend, and so one day she said, let's hitchhike there. So Cheryl, I, and Kathy hitchhiked there because we didn't have wheels. And everything went well. One guy picked us up. He was really nice, took us there, and everything was great. We spent 2-3 hours at the horse farm. Now it's starting to drizzle. It's getting a little dusk outside, getting a little dark, and starting to drizzle. It's going to rain. And I said, come on, we got to go. And so Kathy got done grooming her horse. She rode it a little bit, and then she said, yeah, let's go. So, but I stopped him. I says, you know what? I want to lay down a rule. If you guys agree or not, fine, but I'm going to tell you what I think we should do. If we, when we hitchhike, we don't get into a car. There's 3 of us. We do not get in a car where there's more men than us, okay? Maybe 2 at the most, no more, but even 2 can be too much, really. And they were like, okay, sure, whatever. So we're hitchhiking, and right away this car pulls up. These guys had to be in their 20s, mid-20s maybe. And they pulled up. I don't know what kind of car it was. I just remember it was a real long one. Back then they had those long, I don't know, Plymouths and stuff. They pull up. There's 3 grown men in the back seat, and there's 2 in the front. The one of them was the driver. So Kathy right away and Cheryl jump right in. Cheryl jumps in the back right away. The guys helped her sit on the middle guy's lap in the back seat. So there's 4 people in the back seat, right? Because there's no room for her in the middle, just to sit on the seat. So I'm like, oh, crap. I didn't say anything. I'm just watching this whole thing. She had to actually sit on the lap of one of the guys, the guy in the middle, in the back seat. Yeah, because there was 3 guys in the back seat. Anyway, and Kathy gets in, and she's sitting between the driver in the front seat and the other guy in the front seat. So they're both in the middle between these guys, right? First of all, I'm looking at it. I know how to do math. I'm thinking, where am I going to sit? In the trunk? There's no room. And secondly, I said no. I just said no. And I said, don't you remember my rule? So now the guys are getting a little irritated because they wanted to just book, right? And I wouldn't get in the car. So I guess at that moment, Kathy and Cheryl came to their senses, finally. And I heard Cheryl say, maybe she's right. And Kathy agreed. So they both tried to get out. So first Cheryl's trying to get out, but she has to hop over. Well, not hop over. She had to lean over and crawl over one of the guys to get out. But the guy behind the driver in the back seat grabbed Cheryl by her waistband of her blue jeans, the back of her blue jeans, and held her back and pulled her back. And he wouldn't let her go. And I'm thinking, oh, God, oh, my God. So now Kathy is trying to struggle, too, to get out because the guy on the passenger side in the front seat wouldn't even open the door. Neither one of them opened the door for them. So I'm starting to freak out, and eventually they came to their senses. I guess the guys did, too. But what they did was they finally opened the doors and they just pushed them really hard out. And they landed on the cement. It was like parked next to the curb, and they fell on the curb and part of the sidewalk, whatever. And Cheryl got a little hurt from that, but she was okay. But after they got out, the guys sped off really angrily, cussing at them. And they were mad because, that right there told me they were up to no good. They were up to no good. So luckily they came to their senses, my friends, and they did get out. And now it's starting to pour down rain, right? So Kathy goes back into the horse farm office or whatever, and she said she was going to call her older brother to come pick us up, and he did. So that was a close call. I never hitchhiked after that, to be honest. But my friends did. Cheryl, by this time I had already graduated high school. I made a new friend, Alicia, and she went with Cheryl. They both decided to hitchhike to go to Colorado because it's beautiful, right? And they wanted me to go along. And I said, no way, I'm not hitchhiking all the way to Colorado. I'm not that stupid, or brave. But they did go. And I guess everything went easy peasy. It went really well. When they got there, a little time after they got settled in Colorado for a while, they were only out there for a year. But they called me. One of them called me and said it was perfect. It was a good, they got nice drivers. Usually they were truck drivers. They picked them up and they took them all the way there. Coming back home, though, I found out after they returned back to Michigan, because they did move back to Michigan. And so we, got together again, and they were telling me what happened. On the way back, both of them were raped by truck drivers. And I didn't sit there and lecture them, because what's done is done. But I just shook my head. I mean, I almost cried, because I thought, why didn't you guys just listen to me? You never listen to me. Well, yeah, what are you going to do? In hindsight, there's nothing you can do. But anyway, my friend Alicia ended up going to not University of Detroit. That's where I went, University of Detroit Mercy. She went to Wayne State University, downtown Detroit, became a geologist, and then she booked and moved to Alaska. And she tried to get me to move there. She'd call me, oh, it's so beautiful here. But yeah, I says, yeah, it was freaking cold. I'm not going there. And she says, yeah, but there's more guys than women. And I mean, she was boy crazy, and I wasn't. I didn't care about that stuff. And she ended up working on the pipeline, and she married some guy, changed her last name. Then I heard rumors she moved to Florida after that. They both did. They got married and moved to Florida. I never found her after that because I never knew her last name. Women, when they get married, they always take the guy's last name, or they hyphenate it with their maiden name. But she obviously just took his last name without keeping her maiden last name. So I've been looking for girlfriends all over the place for the last few months, and I can't find anyone. I know they're out there. They're around. One of them's in Canada, but I don't know their last name. Guys are easier to look up and find because they don't change their last name when they get married. Oh, well. That was enough blah, blah, blah. Gosh, I thought this was going to be a quick sequel to my first Detroit Hood video. This is like 40-something minutes long. I think that's about it. There's probably more things I could tell, but, oh yeah, there is. I didn't even think about that. Well, everybody knows about the Detroit riots. We were just kids then. I'll just say this real quick. It isn't that much to tell. We were little then. We were in grade school, my brothers and I, and my sister was, I think, just a baby. They had the Detroit riots going on, racial riots. I forget the year. What was the year? 69? I don't know. We're just little kids. It was bad. I remember it was bad. We weren't that afraid, though, as kids, because we didn't understand, I guess. And they had no school. Schools were closed. Elementary schools, everything was closed. And we were living on Quinn Street in Detroit. That was our second home that we moved to, from Ferry Street to Quinn. Before, we lived on Kilbourne Street. And I remember the sirens all night long. We were only maybe just a few blocks away from all the fires. You could see the glow at night in the sky from the fires, and fire trucks going by. And then they had military tanks driving up and down the streets. It was crazy. Yeah, so everybody had to stay home. And a lot of people couldn't even work, My grandmother and mother, I don't think they could work yet. Everyone was ordered to stay in their home. And I don't know why they used to say this on the news: do not look out the windows. Stay in and don't look out the windows. Maybe it's not to traumatize us, maybe, especially kids. I don't know. But, I'm sure all of us did, because I know my brothers and I, we would peek out the windows. And one day it was daytime and we were doing that. And then we decided, we're going to walk out on the front lawn of our house, because when we peeked out the window, we saw these military tanks going down the street. And that was kind of cool, we thought. And so we just standing on our lawn thinking that's okay. And we were waving to the guys. There was how they stand up in those tanks? It's like an opening, a round opening. They stand up. And that's what they were doing. And then there's a driver. And then they had their guns in the ready. And we were waving. And one of them was nice. He waved to us, but then he got really mad. And he ordered us. I don't think he was mad at us. He was just yelling at us, get back in the house. And don't look out the windows and lock those doors. So that was a pretty wild time. Fast forward to today. Thank God it's a lot better. I think there's still racism, little pockets here and there, or in, some people. But I think if you lived back then compared to today, you would see what a drastic difference it is. I mean, more progress needs to be made in people's hearts, not to be bigoted, but it's a lot better than it used to be. And I don't know why. It's really weird, because in grade school, one of my best friends, Deborah, I won't give her last name, she was an African-American little girl. I remember in 8th grade, when I was 13, I'd go back to Detroit, and I did 8th grade, because before that I was living, I told you about that in another video. I bounced back and forth between living with parents. She was my best friend, and at lunchtime, her house was maybe four houses away from the school, Grant Elementary School we were going to, and she always invited me over for lunch. And when her grandmother was there, because her mother always had to work and stuff, she'd make me a sandwich and make a bowl of soup for me. And I don't know, I just really liked her. They were really nice. I never grew up feeling racist at all towards anyone. The only thing I do get angry about is, and I don't care what color you are, is I get really angry about nasty, cruel, mean people. I don't care what color they are. That's what upsets me, and people that mock others, and just hateful people. I don't hang with those people. I don't hang with them at all. But they make me mad. So that's what I'm bigoted against. It has nothing to do with color of skin. And we had a mixed group in high school and everything at Laura F. Osborne. Everyone got along, except the last day. I think I mentioned it already in another video. I'll do it here just in case. The last day of our graduation at Laura F. Osborne. I think I mentioned it in the other sequel. It was the one where I walked out of the school last day, and the white kids are on one side of the street, and the other side was African American, and they're all throwing rocks at each other, having a riot. That was scary. Yeah, I believe I did put it in the first video. So this is it. I'm not going to keep on going on with this. There's so many tales, but I don't know why I felt like sharing it. I'd love to hear other people's experiences. Hey, you never know. It might be old friends. If you put something online, I might recognize you and we can team up again. I'd love to find some of the people from the old hood. I really would. I'd love to touch base and meet up again, or just talk online together, because, just talking about memory lane stuff. But it's a miracle that we kids in the family got out of Detroit alive. a lot of our friends died. They really did, from drugs. Drugs. And thankfully, I went back and forth to live with my dad. My brothers and sisters, I know they tried something, they probably all did, but they never were addicted to anything that I know of, Yeah, I don't know. It was a wild time. But that whole drug scene blew up because of the hippies. It really did. I think they were, I remember all of us wanting to be like them. We'd see them in the parks all the time. And we're talking mid to late 20-year-olds, they're hippies. And we're like 13, 12 years old, 13 years old. And I don't know, we just thought they were cool. And that's probably why we idolized them. But really, the whole drug scene was nothing to idolize, It really wasn't. It killed a lot of people. A lot of people. My mother once said, "You kids have had more friends die from drugs, overdosing, than she had the number of friends in her entire lifetime, all the way up to adulthood." So that says a lot. Yeah, it was crazy. It was really crazy. The one thing I will always remember, though, and I still listen to it all today when I can find them. Now, every generation probably says this about their music. I know my parents did about their music, and I like some of their music. I'm starting to learn to appreciate it. But honestly, I think the best music was when I grew up. And I would say the 70s and 80s. The 80s, though, they were getting too much in that discotheque that I don't like. I had to work downtown Detroit as a waitress listening to that. Well, I won't say garbage. Some people like it, but it's dancing music, We had the best rock and roll. I'm not into heavy metal rock. I'm not into rap. I just like the soft rock, and I mean, the lyrics were good. The bands, they sounded great. My favorite, though, was the Eagles. Oh God, I listened to them all the way when I moved out west to Arizona. I bought a new Jeep after I graduated university, and I just lived on Bob Seger and the Eagles music on repeat over and over again. But the Eagles, oh God, it was great. It was great. And I still listen to it today, and I still will. I'm liking some of my parents' music. Like, I just got turned on. I mean, Johnny Cash was around forever and ever, right? I was just a little kid, and I just started listening to his music, trying to find some on YouTube to listen to it. And also country western music. I never really cared for it, but I like it now. I don't like the twangy sounding, like hillbilly-ish country music. I like Alan Jackson, Keith Whitley,